I'm Jessica Paxton. I'm afternoon host here at The Current, and I'm joined today by Exene Cervenka and John Doe, two legendary artists and musicians in their own right, but here today together as two of the founding members of the seminal punk band X, an incredibly influential band that emerged in the late 70s as part of the California punk scene. A band that fast forward 45 plus years is still breaking ground sonically. Your lyrics are just as relevant and significant as ever. I know you're in town for a performance ahead of your forthcoming new album, but we're going to get started talking a little bit going back 45 years. Welcome to The Current.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And before we get started, I will be, in full disclosure, I've been following you guys. I've been a huge fan since the very beginning. So this is an incredible honor for me because I'm kind of fangirling over here. So I just want to get that out there.
It's our
right.
our pleasure and honor to be part of
Awesome.
your musical adventure.
Well, I appreciate it, but it really is. It's amazing to meet you both. So let's go back to 1977. How did the band start? How did you guys meet? Give us the story of X, the genesis of X.
Oh, long. I moved to Venice. John moved to Venice. I worked at a poetry workshop place that had all kinds of literary stuff. And John and I met the first night. We both went to the workshop on a Wednesday night. And he'd already met Billy. And he told me about the punk scene. We started hanging out and working on songs. And we worked really, really hard. And here we are.
I can't add to that. It's perfect.
Well, there's so many things you touched on in that fantastic encapsulation right there. The love of poetry, the love of words, the love of narrative. I feel like one of the things that certainly for me as a fan of X's music is, not just the intense in-your-face aesthetic that is punk, but the beauty of language and the beauty of narrative and the darker stories that maybe your lyrics told. And I feel like that comes from that shared appreciation for poetry. Talk a little bit about that intentionality in terms of the kind of music you wanted to make.
Well, if a story isn't dark, it's not worth telling.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
But there's some redemption. And I don't think that we really are an in-your-face punk rock band. We never were obscure or trying to piss people off just by being noisy or aggressive. There was aggression in it, but the songs are fairly traditional. There's a verse, there's a chorus, sometimes there's a bridge, they're melodic. I mean, we haven't fallen too far from traditional style of songwriting. It just so happens that Billy plays what he does, I play what I do, Exene and I sing the way that we do, which sets us apart. But they're all the songs have stories to them. There's a place and a time, and they're somewhat autobiographical, but that can be said even if you write a song about something in the newspaper. You have to identify with it enough. You have to, put enough of yourself and your heart into it to make it worth being a song. So, we're still doing that because that's just what we do. And Exene's description of how we met is fitting because we're minimalists. We don't play fancy. We play well. We don't have grand plans. We don't calculate things. We just do stuff. And it sounds simple, but there's a lot of attention paid to what we do.
There's so much in what you just said that I feel like I want to unpack. First of all, you reminded me of a quote from Vic Chestnut, who said, "Other people write about the bling and the booty. I write about the pus and the gnats." To me, that's beautiful. And I read that. It made me think of X because, again, the beauty in sort of the sordid side of life. I also think about your song, "We're Desperate." We're desperate, get used to it. Some people give me the creeps. It was like, oh my gosh, could anything be more spot on? And who was saying something like that lyrically then?
Gorilla Rose.
Well,
you can look him up. He was early days of the Cockettes and friends with Tomato to Plenty and And I think he gave me that line.
Really?
We're desperate, get used to it.
Okay, I'm looking
So,
that up for sure. So related to that, though, I was going to say, when I said punk, I think stereotypically is considered brash, abrasive, in your face, loud, almost unintelligible, perhaps. And
I
that's
think that's a really
it's way too
reductive.
broad.
It's a reductive description.
100%.
So because it doesn't take into account where punk rock came from, which is the Modern Lovers or the MC5 or any of the CBGB's bands, because they were all different. You can't say that the Talking Heads were abrasive or unintelligible. They were very musical, and same with Blondie or the Ramones. And everyone said, "Oh, the Ramones play 3 chords." Well, that's a fabrication. It sounds like it, but there's more like 8 or 10. It's almost like math rock. So, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have to push against that kind of description because that's what people think of, which is not real.
You said exactly what I wanted you to say. So I apologize if I cut you
No,
off, because that was
it's okay.
kind of what I was hoping for. And that's the thing, is that there's this beautiful musicality. And I was actually going to ask you, like, when unfortunately critics perhaps, music critics, lump certain genres or define certain genres in a way. And to me, that was part of the beauty of X, was taking what maybe was, punk, but then pushing against those definitions and showing how expansive it can be, and showing that you can have this musicality and these stories, and that it isn't just so simple and isn't just so simply defined. So that was exactly what I was hoping you guys would say.
I don't think it was the media that came up with that. I think it was people. Because when the hardcore scene in Los Angeles got mixed up with the real punk scene, that's when everything went really bad. And other cities, they kind of commingled okay together, but we had a huge upwelling of the hardcore stuff, and that became kind of what people considered punk after that. They considered Black Flag to be punk and X to not exist, pretty much. But I don't think that was the media, because the media was really like the New York Times, LA Times, all the main publications in the country and in England and places. They really championed the punk scene, and especially us, and understood it. And the college radio, of course, and the underground press really understood it. So somehow I think that just became kind of later the mainstream kind of, I don't even know how that became the thing, but it became the thing. Maybe
Yeah.
TV or something.
The TV.
Maybe the TV.
So you mentioned too the influence of Los Angeles, the name of your debut album, the influence of being in that city in that time, how that helped to define the band, define your artistic journey. I've heard interviews with you, Exene, where you've talked about the rich cultural and social and political legacy of Los Angeles. John, your bio on your website says you were born in 1977 when you moved to Los Angeles. So talk about the impact of that city, the City of Angels, on your lives artistically and even personally.
Well, I think of it as like Day of the Locust, that book, not the movie, the book. And I think that everybody that enters Los Angeles, you go through this little turnstile, and there you are, and you're in Los Angeles. Now you're part of that fabric of that story, of the silent movie days and the everything, Chinatown and all that stuff. And you walk through that as a player, as a bit player, extra in that movie. And it was really great when we moved there, because there was still a lot of the old stuff. Like I had a Coke at Schwab's drugstore at the counter, thinking,
Wow.
This is where Lana Turner's at. They're all, and most of the stories are not real. But we got to see the really old days of LA before it all got torn down and ruined. Of course, now there's less of it than now, but it's still kind of a magic place. And yeah, I think that, of course, we helped form. Of course, we were one of the people that founded the punk scene. So I don't know that we were influenced by it so much as we influenced it. But yeah, that was a great time. The late 70s in LA and early 80s in LA was just incredible, collision of incredible things. And, just amazing. I'm so lucky that I just accidentally moved there,
And was it accidental, or was it?
I was in Tallahassee, Florida, and I couldn't find a job, and I'd been there for months, and I felt like I had to get out of Florida. And I had one friend. I had two friends in L.A. area, and so I got a phone call that somebody was moving to California. They needed someone to help pay for gas, or they couldn't go. And so I just sold my car and went. I didn't really have any plans once I got there, or I had no idea what to expect. But yeah, but that's what LA is. It's that thing of like you arrive, you get off the bus, you've got your suitcase literally, and you look around and go, wow, I didn't know they had mountains here.
The city of dreams.
It is a city of dreams, yes.
But regarding the punk scene, I mean, we're all influencing each other. Fear or the Screamers or Weirdos or you just name it. We all influence each other. Plus, a lot of the New York bands came to the Whiskey early on, as well as the Damned. So it was just in the water and ready to happen. I think L.A. influenced us through the images because it seemed, and still is, disposable. And coming from the East Coast, it was much different and much more open to experimentation, to do whatever you want. The thing about being born in 77, that's when I adopted the name from, John Waters or Andy Warhol kind of influence.
And related to that, did you changed your name to Exene?
Long before, yeah.
So where did the name of the band X come from? Or was there a connection with Exene, or was that just coincidental?
Before we really had the band going, we were driving down the street past the Starwood, and there was the marquee had some names up there, like, I don't even remember, the somebodies, the somebody else's, the somebody or others. And I was in my early days, I was very, rebellious and out there, and I just said, if I was in a band, I wouldn't even have a name. There would just be a big black X up there. And John said, would you name it Big Black X? I said, no, it would just be an X, because I don't want to have a name. Because I thought that it was really trite to call yourself the something, like the Beatles. I was like, that's stupid,
And back then there was a lot of
The Damned.
the Mumps,
The
the
exactly.
Ramones, the la la
Yeah.
la.
So
Yeah.
I just thought, why do you even have to have that? And a lot of, like, Gun Club doesn't have a the. So we didn't have to have a the,
No.
but
And then you would see X's in many places. Vapor trails in the sky
well,
or
they didn't have those
whatever.
chemtrails back then as much. But
Let's.
you know what they
you
had?
could find
They
them.
didn't. But the thing is that the X wasn't like ubiquitous like it is now.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a big deal about X. Like now it's.
I'm trying to remember, was it in The Decline of Western Civilization, where you talk about going by
That was
some
in
men-
the unheard music.
the unheard music, where they're taking down the
X-lax.
X-lax sign, and
Yeah.
you're like, hey, can I have that X?
Yep. Yeah.
I'm going to wait.
I still have it. It's at my house.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's
pretty
I'm
big.
also glad when you guys talked about LA, talking about Hollywood, old Hollywood, and the idea of visuals, because I feel like another thing that sets your work apart, and both, as X the band and also individually with your solo careers and multiple other projects, is recognizing the importance of visuals. And so you guys, not only groundbreaking sonically, lyrically, but visually. First and foremost, I mean, let's be honest, Exene, total fashion icon from day one. And I remember watching, videos of X back in the day and seeing clips, and women my age wanted to emulate the look and attitude of Exene. You were pushing buttons, in terms of how you, and I don't know if pushing buttons is the right way, but making a statement, in terms of how you looked. But I see that as a reflection of your artistry, your creativity, and same with John, same with Billy Zoom, same with DJ Bonebreak. Like, you guys had a visual that also was part of the music, and I think that's maybe comes from that idea of being in LA and thinking about visuals.
Yeah,
And you are
I
artists.
started that long time before I came to LA, dressing like the way I dress and looking the way I look. Like, I wore red lipstick when there was two colors of lipstick in the world, pink and red. And red was Maybelline #2. and that's what you get it at the 5 and dime. So I was always into that. I was always into the olden days. I never liked modern times. Even in the 70s, I didn't even like it that much. But when people always say that, like they want to look like me or whatever, I always say, well, if you want to look like me, I can tell you how. Look like yourself, because that's what I did, right? I was just being original. And I think people get that. But yeah, it's fun to dress up with thrift store clothes. It's a little harder nowadays, but you can still do it. I see it all the time.
Yeah. As John Waters says, if you're young, go to the thrift store, find the ugliest thing, and put it on, and you'll be fabulous.
Absolutely.
So as you grow older, you have to go and find things that look like they might have been in the thrift store, but they're actually very well made, and they're sort of more expensive. But
I think there's a
my
lot of people
style,
that try to look like that now.
yeah, whatever. It's
They don't have
like-
a lot to pick from anymore.
No.
Irony is the only fashion statement people can make anymore, I'm afraid. The upside-down eyeglasses with the thing on the bottom and the high-waisted like jeans and all that. You can't. There's nothing.
Dora the Explorer,
Yeah, there's not much.
whatever.
I need
But
that on a
I
bumper
think
sticker.
you might be right because I think in LA people were aware of style and Hollywood and glamour, but it was a reaction against the Peter Frampton and Farrah Fawcett blow-dried hair and the movie star cocaine hot tub extravagance, because we didn't have it and couldn't have it, and so we could just do what we did with what we had, and that was good enough. But in that era, you could walk down Hollywood Boulevard with a leather jacket and then get yelled at and be called Devo and things thrown at you because you had holes in your jeans. And it was like, this is Hollywood, MFer. This is where you're supposed to be able to do that. Like, it's not Peoria. God bless Peoria. I mean, this is the land for that. It's like, Jesus, give me a break. So,
And I think that was a big part of again, punk, or the
yeah,
idea.
but that was a great thing. I think that's, if anything, what punk rock's legacy is, that kids in high school and junior high can dress up weird and make a statement, and then they have to battle through that a little bit. They have to struggle a little bit with that, and now it's a lot more accepted. And if that's where like the gender fluidity is coming in, and it's like it's more acceptance. And with young people nowadays, it's like, what do you want to be called? Okay, cool. And that's about as long as it takes. It takes about a second and a half. It's like, all right, let me know if it changes. And I don't know if that's attached to punk rock, but that's part of the fashion thing.
Well,
I digress.
Not at all, because in fact, I was going to ask you guys, when you think about it, and I don't want to get so hung up on the idea of punk, but I think of punk also as like revolution and protest.
It's
and
freedom. It's really just freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah. It pulls people together, and it gives you a kind of vocabulary, and you think, oh, well, you're going to get me and I'm going to get you because we understand or know this. But it isn't, and I think that happened earlier too, where you're just turning people on to music. It wasn't that you were better than someone because they didn't know about it, which maybe happened in the 2000s, like, oh, you wouldn't know about that because you're not cool. It was like, oh, haven't you heard? Oh, you haven't heard this? Well, you have a great thing to listen to, which is, I think maybe that's happening more nowadays.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, there's other stuff I wanted to say, but we're going to end now. But thank you guys.
Thank you,
so
Jessica.
much.
Thanks for having us on.
Pleasure.
The Current is public media made possible thanks to member support.